Hello, media sanitization fans. I'm Kevin Ripa, and this is my Sans 3 Minutes Max. Continuing with our last episode, I left you with wondering how it was we could run out of IP addresses in 1996, and yet we've still been able to survive to this very day, and we still use IPv4 every day. Well, it's a little bit of story time. Prior to 1996, there was no such thing as private address spacing. If you've never heard of private address spacing, we'll explain that in a moment, but I think many of us have. And there was no such thing. What did that mean? That meant that every single computer on the internet had a public IP address. Think about that for a second. If you're the United States government, or you are AT&T, or IBM, or Coca-Cola, every single computer on every single desk has a public IP address. That is a lot of addresses. Well, in 1996, they found out the internet, well, it's ICANN. ICANN is the government of the internet, and IANA, I-A-N-A, are the folks assigned to governing names and numbers. And they ran out. They didn't have any more to assign. They were at about 98% saturation or usage. So they came up with this notion of IPv6, Internet Protocol version 6, which we'll talk about in another episode. But they knew they couldn't just flip a switch and go to IPv6 overnight. So what they did was they created this notion of private address spacing. In other words, as we see here, they set aside 3 different ranges of numbers. And they said any IP address that falls within these numbers cannot be used publicly facing. They're all private address spacing, which means that as long as each network is separate from another, you can use these numbers and reuse these numbers over and over and over again. Well, that was great. And so when they went to the big companies and said, listen, here's private address spacing, here's how it works, please use it. Virtually overnight, the large corporations went to private address spacing, returned back all of the unnecessary now public IP addresses, and dropped the IPv4 saturation down to about 65%. That's the only way we've been able to live this long still hooked to IPv4. I'm not done with IPv4, but that's another episode. In the meantime, and in between time, that's it. Another episode of 3 Minutes Max.